Hello and a very warm welcome to Bhutan This Week, a weekly news magazine program. I'm Samtan Dolkar. Our top stories this week. Prime Minister says bringing ailing Sonam Tamang back from Japan may not be a wise decision. Increased revenue from the sale of power from the 5 major hydropower projects this year. And new housing policy to be ready soon. Now the news in detail. Due to the severity of her health condition, bringing Sonam Tamang back to Bhutan might not be possible. The Prime Minister in a recent online statement said that doing so would be an unwise decision. This statement comes following sharp criticisms in the social media against the government for not helping Sonam's family or supporting them in bringing her back to Bhutan.
Many Bhutanese in social media have joined to pray for Sonam Tamang, and many have also blamed the government for not doing anything to bring her back to Bhutan. But the Prime Minister, through his official Facebook account, shared that they are equally concerned and discussing the situation of Sonam. Many of us, including the Parliament representative of Sonam's constituency, also suggested bringing her back to Bhutan. Given her condition, commercial plane was not an option. She needs to be flown back on a fully equipped air ambulance with a team of medical experts. It will cost a few $1,000,000, but as long as that will bring Sonam back to life, this is not an issue for the government. We will go all out to put the money together. The Prime Minister also clarified that there are risks while bringing her back and after she is here, because of which they have not decided to fly her back. However, in the process of moving her from Fukuoka to Thimphu, if her condition alters or if her heart stops, what happens? Is it wise to move her from the best of medical facilities? Even if we transfer her to an ICU here, will our health facility be able to sustain her life? If not, who will be responsible? I have always been motivated by compassion and kindness and have spent all my life trying to save lives as far as possible. When I'm so passionate about this, how is it even possible to brush aside Sonam's case? 27-year-old Sonam from Tsirang went to Japan through the Learn and Earn program in October 2017. However, about a year later, she was admitted in a hospital in Japan after she suffered from a severe brain damage due to tuberculosis. The government is bearing 30% of Sonam's medical expenses and other additional costs. The rest is covered by her medical insurance. BBS tried to get in touch with Sonam's mother and brother who are currently in Japan with her, but they could not be contacted. But we learned through other sources that if possible, Sonam's mother intends to bring her ailing daughter back to Bhutan. BBS also tried to seek opinions from Japanese health officials on Sonam's possibility of recovery, but we could not get in contact with them. For Pema Sewong, Sonam Pem for BBS News.
The Health Ministry recorded around 5,000 mental and behavioral disorders last year. This is an increase by almost 800 cases compared to 2017, which was about 4,200. A mental disorder is a behavioral or mental pattern that causes significant distress or impairment of personal functioning. Mental disorders are usually defined by a combination of how a person behaves, feels, perceives, or thinks.
According to this year's health bulletin, mental and behavioral disorders due to alcohol, multiple drug use and psychoactive substances, psychosis, depression and anxiety increased by a huge number compared to 2017. Dr. Sencho, a psychiatrist with the National Referral Hospital, says the increasing trend of mental health disorders signifies two things.
One, if the cases are increasing, it means that more people are actually seeking help from our health centers. So it actually reflects the health-seeking behavior of patients. The other issue can be because the actual cases of mental disorders in the country are increasing, and if there are more numbers than last year, obviously more numbers might come to the hospital for treatment.
However, Dr. Sencho added that the actual number of Bhutanese suffering from mental health disorders could be much higher than reflected in the bulletin. He said mental health problems continue to be a major health concern and people still hesitate to come for treatment.
The biggest challenge obviously is, for one, people are actually not coming for help because they don't know they have mental illness. If some of them do have, there's still a lot of stigma about it. They feel shame. Families and neighbors and communities don't actually easily accept mental illnesses as much as you would expect physical illnesses.
Meanwhile, anxiety is the most common form of mental health problems prevalent in the country today. Anxiety is a disorder that causes a feeling of fear and worry.
Neurosis or stress-related anxiety disorder are the most common, and there are many different types. The presentations can be very, and they can be quite sometimes bizarre or peculiar, even to the extent that some people think that they are becoming crazy. They're not really crazy in the technical terms because they're not psychotic. They know they are ill and they seek treatment. Actually, they go everywhere for treatment. So those are called anxiety disorders, and they are the most common, not just in Bhutan, but all over the world.
The Health Ministry has an approved budget of 4.2 million yutam for mental health interventions for this year. The intervention program will focus more on capacity development of the health professionals. Today, there are 4 psychiatrists in the country. Sonam for BBS News.
Now, the government says there's no legality issue when it comes to replacing Shemgang with Sarpong for tourism flagship program. Recently, the opposition said the government's decision of removing Shemgang from the program is illegal. The opposition wrote a letter to the National Assembly Speaker requesting to revoke the government's decision and to reconsider Shemgang as one of the focus districts as approved in the Budget Appropriation Act 2019 to 2020.
Prime Minister Dr. Lote Tsering said the parliament endorsed Tagana, Kasa, Lunchi and Shemgang as 4 focus districts for the program. He said later the Tourism Council under the chairmanship of Foreign Minister removed Shemgang and replaced it with Sarbang, since the district being a gateway to its neighboring districts.
And we cross-checked, we did our homework, and legality issue we must follow what is there in the act. We must follow what is the law of the country, follow Begola. But when it comes to Budget Act, it is not like any other act. Every year there's a Budget Act coming up. Any Budget Act na yumigi provisions this to reappropriate benina, cancel benina, incorporate benina. Please go and refer to financial rules and regulations, which is mandated by or governed by Public Finance Act under Ministry of Finance. So if it is legally not allowed, Ministry of Finance will stop us.
The Prime Minister also clarified that the government's decision is not politically driven.
When the council met, you thought Malay open Begobe, on that ground Shemgang will benefit more. In activities if there are no people to benefit out of it. Please decide on this thing. TCP the JNS. You want to bring back Shemgang and throw Sarbang out, I'm okay with it. You want to keep it as it is, Shemgang being replaced by Sarbang, I'm absolutely fine with this. That the things that are going around in social media is not a problem to me at all, because ultimately I know what I want. I want Shemgang developed.
Earlier this month, the National Council also wrote to the Prime Minister expressing their concern on the decision. For Pema Seong, this is Pasang Doji for BBS News.
Sales from the 5 major hydropower projects reached 3.4 billion yutam as of May this year. According to a report by the Royal Monetary Authority, the sale is an increase of over 200 million yutam from the same time last year. The projects are Basachu, Dagachu, Chukha, Kurichu and Tala hydropower plants.
Of the sales of 3.41 billion yutam, 1.64 billion came from export to India. The rest 1.76 billion was generated from domestic consumption. This is the highest sale recorded for the first 5 months since 2015. Tagachu Hydropower Corporation Limited, which exports all its production, saw a sale of 220 million yutam from the 68.5 million units of electricity it produced from January to May this year. The 336 megawatt Chukha hydropower plant produced a whopping 473 million units of electricity, which generated sales close to 870 and 400 million newton in exports and domestic consumption respectively. The Tala hydropower plant, which paid off all its debts towards the end of last year, also returned massive figures. The plant recorded 536 million newton in exports and 1.12 billion newton in domestic sales. The plant has an installed capacity of 1020 megawatts. Basochu hydropower plant, which only caters to domestic needs, recorded 84 million newton in sales, while Kurichu hydropower plant in Mongar totaled 171 million newton in domestic sales and just 19 million in exports. With sales peaking in July, August and September, and if the sales trend keeps rising, the hydropower projects are in for record sales come autumn. Sherabdoji, BBS News.
The reinforcement of the ban on use and sale of plastic bags has been hugely unsuccessful, with many defaulters still seen in large numbers across the country. And the government says this failure is due to lack of alternatives for plastic bags in the country. The National Environment Commission reintroduced the ban on use and sale of plastic carry bags, Doma wrappers and homemade ice cream pouches in April this year.
Alternatives in place of plastics are yet to be found. During the Meet the Press session yesterday, the Prime Minister and Agriculture Minister both shared that lack of substitutes for plastics in the country is the main reason for the failure of the ban. They also said collective efforts through ideal mindset are one way to tackle the issue of plastics.
It's not the responsibility of the NEC to get Bhutan free of plastic wastage there. We have a flagship program on waste management. Again, whether you call it policy or law or flagship programs, it will not work if you all work together. Just imposing a ban will not work. So we have to change the mindset of our people. We have to have adequate alternatives in place. If you have realized implementation, there's some relaxation. That doesn't mean we are allowing plastic bag as you want it. The ban is still there, but we are really not enforcing it in a very strict way because alternatives may work to mobile. And when we are working on all this.
Failure of the implementation is now a historical issue. Ever since 1999, this issue had been always there in the market session. To ban the plastics without substitutes is a challenge. Is another challenge. But now to find the substitutes itself is a challenge. So this will, I'm sure, this problem will continue for some time. But then the National Environment Commission definitely is doing all the necessary studies to find the right substitutes for the plastics. Until we find a right substitute and put it in the market, banning excess will not be so effective solution.
The government banned the use of the three plastics for the first time in 1999. The ban, however, is not a success story for now. This is Sringdandu for BBS News.
And the government is hoping to address the housing issue with a new housing policy which will be ready soon. The government had earlier pledged in its manifesto to provide affordable houses in urban areas. Works and Human Settlement Minister Dorjit Singh says the policy will focus on reducing construction costs, which will automatically bring down house rents.
Although there has been rapid growth in construction of commercial buildings in Thimphu, majority seems to be for the higher income groups. House rents are soaring beyond the affordability range for lower income groups. Majority of the urban residents have to spend more than half of their income on house rents. According to Thimphu Thompun, the housing problem in the capital has however improved compared to the past.
I feel there is enough housing and people have the choice to move around, and then there is problem of Tenancy Act implementation now. My legal officer is just occupied trying to solve these cases between tenants and the landlords. And it is on the rise, it's not going to reduce. So that clearly indicates that there is surplus housing. If there is no housing, I'm sure such cases will not come up.
In its manifesto, Druk Nyamrup Tsokpa had identified housing problems, especially in urban areas, and had promised to develop a comprehensive plan to provide adequate housing for all. The manifesto also says DNT will identify all major urban areas including Thimphu and invest and work closely with NHDCL to ensure adequate housing within first 3 years in office. They also promised to subsidize home interest rates for low-income groups for a specified period. This, according to the Works and Human Settlement Minister, will be possible with the new housing policy that will be ready soon.
In this policy, it talks about the affordable housing, it talks about home ownership, how to facilitate any construction on any building owners to construct their building in a minimum possible, in a most possible minimum rate, and that will have impact on the house rent. And also it also talks about the home ownership, how a person can own a home.
The minister said the policy will act as a guideline for any future constructions, which will ultimately, to a large extent, solve the issue of affordable housing in the urban areas. Presently, Thimphu alone has a population of 130,000 people. Almost 40% of the total population are residing in urban areas. This is Komal Kharka for PBS News.
Local leaders and people of Hlinse are not happy with the government's response on delaying the Shinkar-Gorgon bypass construction. They say the pledge to see the project through has remained as a tool to gain political mileage.
Since the inception of the project, the Shinkar-Gorgon bypass has been a common agenda at every Dzongkhal Tsogdu session. Resolutions have been submitted accordingly to the Works and Human Settlement Ministry. But to this day, the planned highway remains only on paper. During the second session of the Third Parliament, the Works and Human Settlement Minister Dojit Singh reasoned environmental issues and financial implications for the project's hold-up.
After watching the question hour session of the National Assembly, we understand that the Shinkar-Gorgon highway was delayed due to limited budget and National Environment Commissions Act. But if the highway comes through, it would not only benefit the people and business community of Hlinse, but also the people of 4 eastern districts. Hlinse Shinkar-Gorgon lamdi tendab do chibewaji namme same khabra bombe zo su seshunila ngaji ani zum khelam beudadila kong sojing gonigi dunu chamche memba bepsida ngaji misirki thadora mena.
We were hopeful when the political parties pledged to construct the Shinkar-Gorgon highway. We thought it was genuinely in the interest of the general public. We did not know they were pledging it just to garner votes during the election. They did not have to do that if it was just for the sake of promising. Even the National Council candidates pledged the same. Talking about the possibilities, they mentioned of constructing tunnels. Today, all we can do is hope that the bypass will be constructed.
During the election campaign, the political parties did not mention anything about budget constraints or environmental issues. They pledged as if they had enough budget to start the work. Some even said that they could revise the National Environment Commission Act. But once they got elected, forget about revising the act. They are full of excuses. They were aware of the challenges already.
The minister during the sitting also mentioned of an upcoming alternative route between Hlinse and Bumtang via Tsamang, which will reduce the distance between the two places by 40 kilometers.
The alternative route between Dorjilung and Yongkola is a farm road. It will not benefit the people of Hlinse or the eastern districts. It will, however, be of advantage for the people of Tsamang-Gyok.
Meanwhile, the delay in the construction of Shinkar-Gorgon Highway deferred the road widening works for Gangola-Hlunsi Highway. It also prolonged the blacktopping of Metso-Gyeok Center route. Had the project been through, then the distance between Hlunsi and Bumtang would have reduced by 100 kilometers. This is Sonam Singh for BBS News, Hlunsi.
In recognition of the roles forest rangers play in their sacrifices in the line of duty, the country celebrated World Ranger Day on Wednesday. The Department of Forests and Park Services also introduced a new insignia system in the forestry profession.
Rinchan, a forester at Phipsu Wildlife Sanctuary, lost one of his eyes when firecrackers used to scare away elephants from fields exploded before release. The Ministry of Agriculture and Forests recognized and honored him for his service to the nation. Like him, many rangers across the world are either injured or even killed in the line of duty. According to Thin Green Line Foundation, around 1,000 rangers around the world were killed in line of duty in the last 10 years. Working remotely, separated from their families to protect the most endangered species, rangers and foresters are sometimes targeted by poachers for illegal wildlife trade.
There are illegal poaching and the poachers come from different places. We don't know where they come from. We border with China and India, and people from across the borders come there for poaching. When we try to catch them, some of them run away, but some they carry weapons. We don't have any weapons, so they can harm us or even kill us.
We have some challenges which are generic, which is similar across Bhutan. For example, something like human wildlife country. We have the issue of human wildlife conflict from the Far East, in places like Merasaptin, right till Ha and Samsi until Samzongkha. But at the same time, we do have some challenges which are localized. For instance, like Ha and Paro has a challenge of, especially like if we talk about poaching and like illegal timber, timber market.
As a tribute to rangers across the country, the ministry formally inaugurated the Chelela Sagala Trail and hiked halfway through the trail in memory of the fallen rangers. Despite all the challenges, foresters across the country have been successful in preserving and conserving the natural heritage of the country.
The whole mandate of ensuring the 60% forest cover to meet to ensure the constitutional mandate lies on the shoulders of the forest department and all those officials working for the forest department. So that itself is, I would say, like for me as a ranger, that itself is an awesome mandate actually, and I would say it's an achievement, and at the same time for the entire world, especially when it comes to environment conservation. Bhutan is a leader.
Bhutan has 10 formally protected areas covering more than half of the country. The total bird species in Bhutan now records 747, moth count to more than 1,000 and fish species to 23. Some of the most endangered animals like snow leopards, Asiatic elephants and tigers are being protected. Celebrating the day, the new insignia system for every rank in the forestry profession, from foresters to Director General, was also unveiled. Until now, ranks after Forest Ranger do not have insignia. The new insignia system will have stars on the collar and a logo of department on shoulder flaps. Several nature-related publications and reports by different parks and divisions under the Department of Forests and Park Services were also released. The World Ranger Day was first celebrated in Bhutan in 2017. There are around 1,800 foresters in the country today. For Sangicha in Paro, Sonam Pem for BBS News.
Well, that's all we have for this week. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.